I'm Andy McCall in the LBC 97.3 travel centre. Still the big queues around the east of town. A lot more congestion than usual for this time of the Friday morning. Is I think on the wake of Tower Bridge lifting twice early this morning. One lift at 10 to 7, the other at 7:30. So fairly close together. It's just before the traffic had a chance to ease up. It bubbled up again. So the A13, and seeing the cameras, your stop-start coming in from Prince Regent Lane towards the East India Dock Tunnel. Lane is closed here with a breakdown inside the tunnel, which is by the end of it. Then you're slow along Aspen Way through the Limehouse Link, and pretty dire along the highway as well. Now elsewhere at Bullsmoor, and an accident on the A1055 at Bullsmoor Lane at the Hertford Road, the A1010. In Sudbury, Greenford Road, the A4127, that's blocked at Sudbury Hill after an accident. Coming up from the southeast of town, it's New Alton, the A20. There's a fault with the traffic lights at 5 ways, and that means delays coming into town past the driving range. The good news is, at least after the problems yesterday with the Victoria line, it's a good service. Keep another moving. Next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC 97.3 Travel
with Go2 Meeting. Don't let traffic ruin your meeting. Hold it online from anywhere.
LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC 973. This is London's biggest conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning, 5 minutes after 9 on LBC 97.3. It's often been accepted that a week is a long time in politics. Well, what's this week been like for UKIP leader Nigel Farage? It started with one of his councillors claiming that legalising gay marriage had angered the Lord and caused the floods. It got worse when Mr Farage appeared to insult half the electorate by saying that women were worth less than men in the city. It got even worse after that. Mr Farage was then assaulted by a protester, and then it would appear yesterday ditched policies for what he perhaps hadn't fully thought through as a manifesto which he said he wasn't involved in, and then wasn't sure whether he did or he didn't support Trident. Nigel Farage is in the studio with me now. How's your week been, Nigel?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, I have to say, the low point was being assaulted by a mob and who were intent on physically hurting me, which is a very rare phenomenon in British politics. And that was very frightening, because I'm only 8 weeks post a big operation. You know, the last thing I need is a serious bash around the head or the neck.
It's a serious operation as well. I don't know how much you've shared with the public, but that's quite an op you went through.
Yeah, so grisly, even I didn't ask about the details of it. So that was horrible. Much of the rest of the week, frankly, is a nonsense. I mean, this councillor...
Yeah.
Who talked about the weather.
Yeah.
When he was a Tory councillor in 2012, said exactly the same thing.
Right.
He said, because of gay marriage, there will be disasters of biblical proportions with our weather. Do you know what? That made the Henley Standard for 1 week and nothing else. Mm-hmm. He defects to UKIP, and it becomes a national story. Did you know that this week a Conservative councillor in East London was arrested for waving a firearm at somebody?
Mm-hmm. I don't think
I don't think you did you? Because the BBC wouldn't tell you that, and nobody else would tell you that. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if that councillor arrested for waving a firearm at somebody had been UKIP? It would be front page everywhere. So we've got this situation where the voluntary side of the UKIP party is being put under the kind of scrutiny that has never happened to any political party in this country. And why? Because we're threatening the establishment.
Well, is it not, Mr Farage, the fact that you have members who have views such as homosexuals prefer sex with animals, ladies can't play chess, and what's the other one? They can't play chess, bridge or poker. Oh, that's right. And women deliberately wear trousers as a form of hostile behaviour.
What happens is...
If you have people like that in your party, you have those views.
Every single one of those has defected to us from the Conservative Party. So maybe what we're going to have to do...
Well, what does that say about your party,
about the Conservative Party? What does it say about the Conservative Party?
That they choose to leave the Conservatives to come to UKIP. What does it say about UKIP?
What it says is that nobody gives a damn what volunteers in politics say or do unless they're in UKIP. That's what it says.
What about yesterday's appearance on a BBC television show?
I'm really annoyed about that, and I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
We had a manifesto, and I'm going to put some inverted commas around it, that was produced in 2010. It was basically a series of policy discussion papers that was put up on the website as a manifesto. It was 486 pages long. I'm pleased to say that the idiot that wrote it has now left us and joined the Conservatives, so there is some traffic going back the other way, and they're very welcome to him. It was Malcolm Pearson, who was leader of UKIP at the time, was picked up in interviews for not knowing the manifesto. Of course he didn't know the manifesto. It was 486 pages of excessive detail. And 18 months ago, I said I want the whole lot taken down off the website. We reject the whole thing. We'll start again with a blank sheet of paper. So there's nothing new in that story. And as I said to them...
You didn't seem to know whether it was
I didn't read it.
I didn't,
Nick, I didn't...
to wear a uniform.
Nick, I didn't read it. It was drivel. 486 pages of drivel. I didn't read it, nor did the party leader. It was a nonsense, and we've put that behind us and moved on to a professional footing. But what upset me was the BBC said to me on that programme, well, what about the UKIP policy of scrapping Trident? I said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? I said, where did you get that from? He said, your website. No, he didn't. I mean, Andrew Neil, I've got the utmost respect for as a political commentator and interviewer, but somebody in his research staff has given him a bum steer on that. That is nowhere on ukip.org is that to be found.
So the idea of scrapping, you will not find it?
There was, not on ukip.org, on a discussion forum, a year ago, somebody put up an idea, a policy proposal. What if we scrapped Trident?
Was it in any way ever endorsed, in any way, shape or form?
That has never been adopted and accepted as UKIP policy. And every
never been endorsed in any way, shape or form. Never been.
It has never formally been put out there as UKIP policy. And we've been thinking very hard about Trident and what to do with it. And we will come out in the summer with our policy, but it will not involve scrapping Trident.
So you're in favour of Trident, we can at least say that.
I think there is an argument that possibly we could, in tight times, go down from 4 submarines to 3, but I think we need to maintain the independent nuclear deterrent, yes.
I don't know if you saw the Daily Mirror earlier in the week. They had, this is the last one before we go to the calls, they had 20 policies, and they asked, is it made up or is it UKIP? Can I ask you, drinking 5 pints of fine English ale every lunchtime would help save pubs from closure. Is that a UKIP policy or is that made up?
Well, jolly well ought to be, oughtn't it? I mean, come on, this all gets a bit silly, doesn't it, really?
Is it UKIP policy?
And why only 5? No, sorry. We'll try and take this serious. No, people can take the mickey as much as they like.
Is that UKIP policy?
Of course it's not UKIP policy. I mean, come on, Nick. The point is, we are hitting the buttons on Europe, on immigration, on social mobility, on a tax system that befuddles everybody. We're hitting those buttons. We're picking up support from Tories in the south, from Labour in the north. We're polling higher than we've ever polled. The establishment are wetting themselves over the fact we've got the European elections on May the 22nd, and according to Paddy Power, the bookies last night were odds-on favourites to win.
And you don't think they're wetting themselves about the fact you've got a councillor who thinks that it's the gay people that cause flooding, not wetting themselves?
Do you know what? I'd rather have a councillor that said that than one that waved firearms at people, and yet you don't hear that on the UK media, so we're getting a very false impression of what's going on.
Robert's in Redditch. You're through to Nigel Farage. Go ahead, Robert.
Oh, good morning. Yes, I'm a gay man. I just... initially, I welcomed... Mr. Farage's decision to suspend the UKIP councillor, but behind all the giggling, of course, over the remark, is the preposterous remark, I was struck by the fact that here we had an elected politician, or at a fairly modest level, but nevertheless an elected politician, not a batty bishop or a street preacher, actually prepared to invoke religion to stir up hatred by scapegoating an innocent group of people. Now, I shouldn't have been surprised, really, because UKIP, I think, was the only party that actually opposed equal marriage. And I heard what he said about the Tory party also.
Can I move you to your question, Robert? This is important context, but I've just got a sense of what everybody wanted to get through.
Of course, yes. Rightly or wrongly, UKIP is perceived as a party of xenophobes, homophobes, misogynists and racists. Does he really think the British people with a sense of fairness are going to vote his party into power?
Stay on the line.
Do I really think the British people with their sense of fairness will not see through these repeated press attacks on UKIP and realise this is an attempt by the establishment to do us down because of the odd balmy opinion of a member here and there? As I say, this guy was elected at a junior level for the Conservative Party. He made these comments as a Tory. It wasn't a story, and now it is.
Robert, response from you?
Well, balmy, and it may be, he may just be one, but he's one among many. I mean, Nick, you at the beginning of this interview cited a whole number of balmy people in UKIP, and I'm afraid it is a party that is attracting these far-right...
we're far-right now as well, are we?
Yes.
There we are.
The Tories have read the runes. The Tories have read the runes. They look across the Atlantic.
I think Robert has a point, Mr. Farage. Let's talk about, I think, a member of yours in Sheffield who said the thesis on Islam and political correctness of Anders Breivik was accurate. the Norwegian gunman.
And you would find people with views like that in every political party in this country if you went to, association meetings. And this is an establishment attempt.
Who agreed with Anders
Breivik? This is. I've no idea who these people are. They're not.
You know who Anders Breivik is?
None of these people.
Do you know who Anders Breivik is?
Of course I do. But okay. I mean, this bloke in Sheffield.
This man was Steve Moxon. He was a candidate in Sheffield, one of your members.
Well, listen, you're going to get silly things said by people in all walks of life, in all political parties.
Women who don't clean behind the fridge are sluts.
And Nick, you can go on all you like. Actually, the intelligent British people can see this is an attempt by the media to do down a party because of the slightly balmy views of a few people.
Slightly balmy,
what we
Mr.
have.
Farage.
It's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, if you're a former BNP member, you can join the Conservative Party today. You can join the Labour Party today. You can join the Lib Dems today. Nothing to stop you. We're the only party that actually prohibits people with backgrounds like that from joining our party. We've done everything we can to make sure we do not harbour extremism or gross intolerance within UKIP. I think we've done that successfully.
Muslims are breeding 10 times faster than Christians.
And I think the British public are intelligent enough to see through all of this.
Madeline's in Kensington. Robert, thank you. Madeline in Kensington, go ahead.
Good morning, Nick, and thank you for taking my call, Mr. Farage.
Good morning.
First of all, to soften the blow, I'm a fully paid up UKIP member and I will work very hard for you. However, I think your heart is ruling your head when we talk about letting Syrian people come over here. The point I want to make is women and children, fine. We have a wonderful welfare system, and I would think very few of them would want to go back to Syria. And then we come across this right to a family life. And we will then have them being able to have their husbands, their sons, and their fathers over here. And we won't know who on earth they are. And we've already seen this week that Theresa May cannot stop terrorists from staying in this country. And we don't know what these people are going to be like, whether they'll be Mujahideen, Sunnis, Shiites, Taliban, Al-Qaeda.
Let's hear from Mr. Farage.
I, of course, understand your concern. The point I was making was this, and there is a bit of heart in this, and no apologies for that. At no point in the last couple of 100 years would we even in this country have had much of a debate about this. We would have said, as the one European country that has always, according to British values, offered a bit of help and refuge to those in fear of their lives, there would have been no debate. We would have had refugees coming here from Syria. But because we've surrendered control of our borders to the European Union, and because the Labour and the Tory party are hugely embarrassed and fearful by the great influx we've had from there, we've opened the door to Romania and Bulgaria, but at the same time turned our back on what have been traditional British values of offering refuge to those in trouble. That is the point. That is the distinction that I was trying to make between economic migrants and refugees. Clearly, the Syrian problem is vast in scale. And what I was really saying was that it's bad enough for Sunni and Shia people who are displaced by the civil war, but at least they've got neighbouring countries they can go to and be at home in. But ever since we invaded Iraq back in 2003, the plight of Christians in that part of the world means that actually you have displaced homeless Christians who've literally got nowhere to go. And I would rather we offered refuge to a few thousand people from Syria, Christians fearing for their lives, than open the doors to Romania and Bulgaria.
Final response from you, Madeline.
Well, I agree with you, but I do think you have to think about, the British people. And I've got sons that work in London, as I think you do, and I don't want to have to worry every time that I hear they're going on a tube or bus. I wonder if they're going to get there safely, because these people don't basically like Christians, do they? And I'm afraid they do bite the hand that feeds them on occasions.
Well, as I say, I made the point that I think if we're going to offer refuge, we should be specifically looking at the Christian problem, because they are a persecuted minority now right across that region. But it's a very, very difficult issue. But I do not want us, UKIP as a party, to move away from the fact that we support and believe in traditional British values on these issues.
Madeline, thank you. Karen's in Jersey. Karen, you're through to Nigel Farage.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Farage.
Good morning.
Privileged to speak to you. Firstly, I'd like to ask you, David Cameron says that he's going to renegotiate the position with the EU, the United Kingdom's position with the EU, that is. Now, we've been lied to since Ted Heath took us into the EEC, which was the common market. Every politician, bar yourself, and actually, I'm going to mention his name. I went to a lecture with Enoch Powell before the referendum in 1975, and he said we shouldn't go into the common market or the EC. And I unfortunately believed in Ted Heath rather than Enoch, and I made a big mistake.
So moving you to your question, if I could,
So
Karen.
moving to my question, could you please tell me, Mr. Farage, if we could renegotiate our position, or have we got to get all the other members to agree with us?
As you remember back to those days, you'll remember the last time we renegotiated, it was done by Harold Wilson. He was going to renegotiate Britain's membership of the EEC. He went away, came back with nothing, dressed it up as if some great concessions had been sought, and won the referendum. Look, the European Union is in deep crisis. It's in crisis because it's overextended itself to allow very poor countries in southern and eastern Europe to join. And so there is a huge electoral backlash in the north against economic migration on a large scale. It's in even deeper trouble because of the Eurozone and the catastrophe that is wreaking on those Mediterranean countries. And for those reasons, they have decided in Brussels what they must do is centralise power further. So EU reform in Brussels means more power going to the centre, not power going from the centre back to the nation states. And the only way Cameron could get any concession out of the European Union is to walk into the room holding a great big stick. And that great big stick would be, he would invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which was the intention to leave unless he got what he wanted, and then he could actually have a negotiation. But given that Mr. Cameron has thrown the stick away already by saying whatever the outcome of these renegotiations, he will vote in the referendum for us to stay in. It is frankly nothing more than a farce. It's an attempt by him to kick a difficult, contentious issue into the long grass post the next election, and it is not credible in any way at all.
Thank you for that. I must turn to some of the emails and questions that are coming in. Lester in Barrow asks, if you were in charge of the Lib Dems and the scandals were going on your watch, what would you do?
You have to make your mind up, and that's the problem that Nick's found himself in. He's found himself in a position where, on the one hand, he thinks Renard might have done wrong, but he doesn't think he's done that much wrong, and he's being lobbied from and he's basically been piggy in the middle, and he's been pushed by some elements of his party to ask Renard to apologise for something that he said he didn't do, and then he's been pushed into suspending him. And leading political parties is very, very difficult, and there come times when you have to say, OK, whatever the circumstances, this is my decision. And I think Nick's problem has been indecision.
So what should he do? In the case of Mike Hancock is difficult because that possibly has some police elements, but with Lord Renard,
I think with Lord Renard, Nick should have made his mind up earlier. Was he going to back Renard or was he going to sack Renard? And I say that it's this piece of indecision in the middle that I think has damaged perhaps his credibility.
One more. This comes in from Rachel in Kent. If I was working in the city, why would I be worth? It's not worth less. It's worth less than a male counterpart. This is, of course, the comments that you made earlier.
Well, I was addressing a business breakfast on Monday morning of brokers and dealers in the City of London. And the question was asked, why are women in that sector paid 30% less than men? Now, there's one of two reasons. Either there is still gross discrimination against women in the City of London, and I don't believe that. Because I think, actually, since the American banks and everybody else came to London, it is now, a bottom-line world. They couldn't care less who you are. If you make them money, they'll pay you. Because if they don't pay you, you go somewhere else. So I reject the idea that the city is sexist anymore. But what I noticed in my career, and I tell you this, Nick, I would not, when I was working as a broker, take a fortnight's holiday. A fortnight was too long to be away from those accounts. and women make different lifestyle choices. It is normally the women that take the responsibility in life for looking after the kids. If there's a crisis, one of the kids at school breaks a collarbone, is it the guy that leaves the office to go and sort it out, or is it the mother? It's not always, but it's nearly always the mother. And I think that is why it is more difficult for women in that particular sector to reach the same pay grade as the men. If you're a dentist, if you're a doctor, if you're a TV presenter, a radio talk show host and a woman, then
not quite the same as worth less, though, is it?
People are paid in the city according, if they're brokers, to what commission income they can bring in. There are some women who manage to bring up families and run a broking business. It is not an easy thing to do.
And this is because mum has to go and help the child who's had broken his collarbone.
Well, Nick, if I'm wrong about this, then we do have gross discrimination in the City of London. It's one or the other.
A member of which political party said women don't have the ambition to get right to the top because someone gets in the way and it's called a baby? That's one of your colleagues, Stuart Agnew, UKIP MEP. It's a sort of sense coming through your party, isn't it? Isn't there danger you're going to alienate women?
Maybe what we should do is just lie. Maybe next time I get a question about it, I'll just lie. I'll just do what everybody else does. I'll say something that isn't true, and then there'll be no debate or no argument about it. The fact is, there are now 1 million men who are bringing up families at home with a woman out working. So there are some changes happening in society, but overwhelmingly, it's the women that not only have the baby, but really take the responsibility for bringing up the family. And there are some super women who can do that and run a big career, but it's not an easy thing to do.
John's in County Durham. John, you're on the radio.
Hello there, Nigel.
Hello.
Hello. I just want to talk to you about your current stance on gun control, because as you know, Tony Blair brought in a total handgun ban in 1997, I think it was.
He did, yeah.
Yes, and I just want to get your opinion. I've never been in favour of that.
No.
Do you think it was the right thing to completely ban handguns?
I think,
because we're such a good, with some of the best shooters in the world, and I believe that, law-abiding people who follow the law, mature, should be able to get a license to hold these sort of guns, because I hold shotguns.
I would not like us to go to the American system, which strikes me as being absolutely crazy. That you can go and buy automatic repeating rifles down at a local gun shop that looks more like a supermarket. I think proper gun licensing is something we've done in this country responsibly and well for a long time. And I think the knee-jerk legislation that Blair brought in that meant that the British Olympic pistol team have to go to France to even practice was just crackers. And if you criminalise handguns, then only the criminals carry the guns. And it's really interesting that since Blair brought that piece of law in, gun crime doubled in the next 5 years in this country. So, but maybe we should be discussing, maybe this is a question that Nick should ask the Tory party, as one of their councillors, I repeat, has just been arrested for waving a firearm.
What would the UKIP policy be regarding gun control then?
I think that we need a proper gun licensing system, which to a large extent I think we already have, and I think the ban on handguns is ludicrous.
So again, if it's kept in a lockbox and you've got your licence...
Absolutely.
All right. John, happy with that? Can I move on? Or a quick point for Nigel Farage?
Yes, I believe that.
You've got the answer you need. Thank you, then I can move on. Robert's in Dulwich, an area well known to you, of course, Nigel. Morning, Robert.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yesterday, the European Court of Justice ruled against Osborne and the Treasury's appeal. And this is in relation to a ban on short selling. The European regulator, the pan-European regulator, which has just been set up in Paris, is going to be able to overrule the UK regulator and decide when short selling bans in stocks on stocks can be put in place, with the idea that they can calm down volatility. That doesn't work. That was shown in 2008 and 2009 in practice. The very reason that these people try and impose, they undermine themselves, because actually what you do is you create more panic when you start putting short-selling bans in. Now, what worries me...
Let's move you to... Again, I'm sorry, I've got to move you to a question, Robert.
Yes. What worries me, it is a fundamental... two people want to transact an equity. Someone wants to buy someone else's company, someone else wants to sell a stock of their company. I don't understand how this is being allowed to happen. I cannot understand.
Isn't the point, Robert? What hope is there of Mr. Cameron renegotiating anything, given that this week the European Court of Justice has confirmed that the British government is not in control of Britain's biggest industry? And I will not have financial services traduced. It's all wealthy bankers. It isn't. It's people working in back offices in Leeds and Sheffield. It's the insurance industry. It's the banking industry. It's the foreign exchange industry. It's all those different things. And, over 15% of the tax-raising ability of the government in this country comes from our financial services sector. It's our biggest industry. And you know what? Whether you now have a Labour or Tory government makes no difference. We've surrendered control of that industry. Shame.
Couple of emails, these coming in right at the top of the pile. Tony, at last the voters have in this country a politician they can believe in. I had always voted Conservative. I'll be voting UKIP this time. Mr. Farage, you're a breath of fresh air. Colin in Beckenham, the more outspoken and people with diverse views that UKIP recruit, the better. It's what we love about them. The more it annoys the lovers on the left, the better. They'll get my vote. This is a question, though, from Simon. Now you've ripped up your 2010 manifesto, will man-made climate change continue to be taught in schools if UKIP gain power? And what do you think think of HS2?
HS2, I'm vehemently opposed to. They said it was about speed. Well, actually, it's 2 hours, 2 minutes from Euston to Manchester Piccadilly, right to the heart of the business district, so I don't buy that argument. If you reduce that by 50 minutes, would it make Manchester a wealthier place? No. As we've seen in France with the TGV, it would drive more business to London, as it's done with Paris. And this religion of man-made climate change, for which we have to despoil England's green and pleasant land with ugly, disgusting, burden back-chomping wind turbines, which cost a fortune and which the poor pay for. And we're doing all of this. We're disadvantaging manufacturing industry. We're making the poor pay the bill. We think we're saving the world. And the Indians and Chinese are building 4 new coal-fired power stations every week. It is nonsense.
I take that as a no. Final question for today. Lauren in Aberdeen. Go ahead, Lauren.
My question is that if you were to enter a coalition with the Tories at the next general election, which ministerial position would you like to hold?
Minister of Fun.
Pardon?
Minister of Fun. That's the one I...
Minister of Fun.
If that ever came about, I'd love to be the Minister for European Union Affairs, because I'd like to be the person that gets the chance to sign the document that says goodbye to political union and hello to being trading, being friendly and being neighbours with Europe, but not being governed by Herman Van Rompuy.
But not Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Farage.
I don't think so, do you?
No, I don't know. Who knows? Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you for that question. Nigel Farage, thank you for coming in the studio. Nigel Farage will join us again. You're listening to LBC 97.3. Nigel, keep your head down next time. News is next.
A £160 million shortfall in funding for London's Crossrail will have to be covered by